The key to rebuilding successfully is hitting on draft picks. Let's evaluate just how good Ace Bailey is, and more importantly, will be. This is Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Jazz Nation? Welcome into Locked On Jazz. My name's Leif Thulin, and I'm excited, honored to have the opportunity to fill in for David Locke on Locked On Jazz. You guys know me, the vast majority of you guys at least. If you don't, I'm a statistician for the Utah Jazz, draft nerd, and diehard fan of our beloved Utah Jazz. Thank you guys for making Locked On Jazz your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Jazz is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Jazz. So the best way to help us grow is comment anything below. And question of the day is, what are your expectations for Ace Bailey for his full rookie contract? AKA, how good will he be by year 4? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on NBA Future and an NBA Future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. On this show, I'm going to break down my observations as compared to my documented expectations from the preseason for Ace Bailey and outline what I see as his likely role for the rest of this season, but more importantly, the rest of his rookie deal. I'll also dive into other recent Jazz draft picks such as Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, and Kyle Filipowski. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Ace Bailey, for the everydayers, you guys may remember this. If you don't, not a problem at all. I did a show with Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball, and we talked about Ace Bailey, our expectations statistically, what we thought he'd be going forward, where he should be in the draft. But I also compared him to the likes of Michael Porter Jr., Brandon Ingram, Brandon Miller. I even touched on Kevin Durant and Paul George for good measure. So I mentioned that to him. We talked about their ascension as their careers have gone. We'll compare that as we go in this one. 14 points a game was my expectation. 14 points, 5.5 boards, 1 assist, 43% from the field, 36% from 3, 78% from the line. Those were the splits I expected. And I did make it very, very clear that I thought 14 points would be heavily aided by a nice kick in March and April where he's going to score more because he'll have more opportunities to do so. Josh Lloyd had very, very similar prognostications, which shocked me. I didn't think we'd be that close. We ended up very, very close, and both of us were uber specific about numbers increasing come March and April. Where Ace is right now, 12 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, 45% from the field, 34% from 3, and 71% from the line. Those are good. I think they're pretty much on par with what we would have told you through February. I do think that it's different because Ace Bailey is on court with better players, and the Jazz are playing better than I thought they would. And they have been playing better from earlier in the season than I thought they would, which I think has diminished Ace's numerical impact. He's gotten better, though, and that's what really matters. What I didn't expect from Ace's rookie season was him to almost be reluctant to shoot the rock because he's unconscious as a shooter and has been throughout his high school and college career. So I was happy to see he was keen to swing the ball and fit in, but I was almost disappointed at the same time that he was so happy to fit in and lose what made him stand out. Like, if that makes sense, I think what makes him stand out is this is an unconscionable shooter who's at 6'9", who can create and score, and he was happy to just swing the ball and come off screens and not shoot very much and be so focused on doing the little things that will keep him on the court. He didn't do the things that made him a top 5 pick. And I will say this, part of the deferential nature that he showed is because the Jazz were better than I thought they'd be, probably better than many thought they'd be. Keontae George's growth has been instrumental in that, and Lauri Markkanen progressed to the mean after a down year last year. I didn't expect his pathway, however, to be blocked by guys like Svi and Bryce, as long as it was. Will Hardy played those guys. Ace Bailey's shot attempts, I think, were impacted by those guys. But what remains true, regardless of all that, is Ace Bailey has demonstrated valuable and, most importantly, unteachable, emphasis on unteachable skills that I remain optimistic and very optimistic to see further develop. Let me name them for you. Ace can shoot the rock. And when he slashes as a cutter, He has a vertical presence and athleticism that, coupled with his shooting traits, are exceedingly rare. There aren't guys who can dunk like Ace that can shoot like Ace. And I think he's got more individual creation ability for himself than he's been able to show thus far. And I think will be shown as the Jazz have fewer bodies casting shadow on his game in February, March, and April. I also believe that defensively, due to that athleticism I referenced, I think he tries and he has length and he's got coordination. And though rebounding isn't defense, he's got some impressive rebounding traits that I think bode well for his ability to stay on the court as a good rebounder, even if his defense doesn't really keep up with his offensive and athleticism skills. Has he made me think, oh, yeah, this guy's a surefire all-star? No, the answer is no. I wish he had. But he has left me thinking the Jazz have a really solid player, a really good piece who fits the timeline and the build of a roster well, who, if honed in and developed well, enables the Jazz to have a talented wing who can shoot the ball, play multiple positions, the 2 and the 3, and you really can't have enough of that. If you think of every team that's done a nice job in rebuilding and become contenders, they have that in spades. He is the Jazz's only player, excuse me, who fits that criteria in spades, who can shoot, defend, and has requisite size. Where I want to see Ace improve, of course, is when his shot's not going. How can he impact the game? And that's a skill that further improves with time. But I've attended a couple games and I've had nice seats, been able to just train my eye on Ace. And when he's not shooting it well in those games, he's hardly noticeable on a court. And that is a problem. And he has 3 quarters where you hardly notice him. And he has 1 quarter where he has 3 pop plays in a minute, a tip in dunk, an offensive rebound. He kicks out, gets the ball, relocates, hits a 3 off a pin down, pump fakes off a pin down and shoots a mid-range jump shot or dunks a ball off a Nurkic back cut. Like I watched him against Julius Randle. And one thing I'll touch on in terms of improving his strength and improving a weakness is adding strength. And of course, Julius Randle's an imposing, burly, physical player. But I think his overall defensive consistency improves. I think his finishing improves. His ability to create space improves with strength. And we saw Cody Williams improve enormously from year 1 to year 2. And Ace is a similar body type. And Ace has a whole lot more in his repertoire to add than Cody in terms of offensive ability to use strength. But I think it helps him defensively. And what I bring up Julius Randle for is in that first quarter against the Timberwolves, Ace had 8 points, was super active, hit a few threes, got an offensive rebound, a dunk. Second and third quarter, hardly noticed Ace. Then the fourth quarter of the recent game, the Jazz against the Timberwolves in Salt Lake, in the fourth quarter, he had 2 dunks, he had a steal, hit a 3, and he has these infectious smiles on his face. And you know he loves it. He's playing hard. He's doing all the right things. So as his strength improves, I think a lot of the stuff we perceive as weaknesses, those weaknesses get minimized. And I expect Ace to have a 30-ball or 2 in the next 2 months to close the season. And our collective stock about Ace will rise, just as it has in previous March and Aprils with rookies with far less promise, such as Ochai Agbaji. I remember a day where it was Lowry's option 1 and we untouchable, Kessler 2, Agbaji 3. Well, Ochai gone the next year. Taylor Hendricks, after shooting 55% after his woes to start the season, shot 55%, and everyone was like, well, I think he's a better prospect than Keontae George, whose big knock was inconsistency because he handled too much of a burden early. My point being is Ace has a lot more to prove and has proven a lot more already than those guys, and those guys we ended up optimistic about. I think Ace will have a strong finish to the season. Now, let's bring up the conversation that I think intrigues me the most and I think will intrigue you the most. Is Ace reminded me of Brandon Miller. He reminded me of Brandon Ingram. He reminded me of Michael Porter Jr. And I compared them to Ace and my expectations for Ace prior to the season. We'll touch on how they did in their rookie years and then their timeline for their individual ascensions and ask the question of how good will Ace Bailey be by year 4? That's all next on Locked On Jazz. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and one position you have to fill sitting wide open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat for you. that you'll love. In the minute I've been talking to you guys, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed. According to Indeed data worldwide, that's a stat, ironclad. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing the candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person, cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All the listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at indeed.com/podcast. So just go to indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. I also want to tell you all about TurboTax, because tax season doesn't have to take over your life and impact it miserably. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert from start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. So instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can instead meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms, and they work to get you every deduction that you deserve. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take care of your taxes, take taxes off your plate, and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back to Locked On Jazz. And welcome back, Jazz fans. Get Locked On Jazz ad-free with the Everydayer Club, plus members-only Discord access, and you can join it. LockedOnJazz.supercast.com. And for all the all-access members that join, I give breakdowns for the NBA draft 3 days a week, and Lock has tons of special Jazz content just for you guys for $5 a month or $50 a year. So certainly worth your time there, because you love the Jazz. That gives you an inside scoop to all things Jazz. All righty, comparisons here. Michael Porter Jr. played 16 minutes a game, scored 9 per game his rookie year. Admittedly, he shot fantastically. Ace, per my projections, was 14 a game, and that would translate per minute like 19. I started diving super deep, but I'll make this really simple. Ace, he was a 12 per game and 4 boards. Michael Porter Jr., who is a good comparison. Like, he's a good player. He didn't fit in the timeline. There's more of a narrative now, but put simply, the guy could really shoot. And at one point, people thought, oh, the Denver Nuggets have a big three with him, Murray, and Jokic. That's good company to be in. He scored 9 a game in his rookie year. So his second year, he scored 19 per game on 31 minutes. Admittedly, he had Murray and Jokic creating for him. And I do think Ace has a possibility of upping his game to that realm. I think it's unlikely with the addition of Jaren Jackson. He gets statistically to the point of 19. Like, 19's a lot of points when you got Jaren, Lowry, Kessler, Keontae to also feed. But let's think about this. Ace scores off isolation in a way that we think he can, that MPJ until this year has never done, because he also was playing with Jokic. But MPJ had significant downfalls. He was a terrible defender, and yet nonetheless he was a coveted archetype because he could, at 6'9", shoot the heck out of the ball, and he also rebounded well. Ace isn't shooting it as well as Michael Porter Jr., does have more athleticism, does defend better, can shoot similarly. Hasn't yet, but I think he can. He had teams thinking Denver would have a big three coming. I want to remind people of that. Ace, I think, is in a different timeline than Michael Porter Jr., but I do think it's important to note that a guy who's like primarily off ball, playing alongside great creators like Jokic and Murray, could fit in and perpetuate his stats from the 9 a game range to 19 very quickly. Like, Ace is ahead of the curve. Don't think he quite gets to 19, but I do think his overall impact is higher than that of Porter Jr.'s in Denver in year 2. So that's a good sign. Let's go to Brandon Ingram. I'll be curious to see if the Jazz let Ace rock more if he really does improve, because I think Ace does have a possibility of taking an enormous jump. Ingram, rookie year, 9 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, 40% from the field, 29 from 3 in 29 minutes. That was on the Lakers. His second year, he went to 16 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, 47%, 39 from 3. Third year, 18, 5, and 3. And then he went to the Pelicans in year 4, 24, 6, and 4. And as soon as Brandon Ingram got a full opportunity, He became an all-star, despite being drafted over in the sense that they drafted Zion Williamson, and he became the second fiddle, but really it was the top option as Zion was often injured. I expected Ace, and this is my preseason notes, to outachieve Brandon Ingram in the career. I think he will have a better career than Brandon Ingram. I still think so, but it's going to be close. But once again, I think these are similar players, and it all bodes well to see that these guys who have turned into fringe all-stars or all-stars have had a steady rookie year and then a enormous jump into their second year. And I still believe it may look differently for the Jazz, considering the Jazz have now accelerated their timeline than it would have looked if Ace Bailey didn't have Jaren Jackson jumping into the fray. I think Ace could be a 19 per game guy. I think he could be a far higher usage. Now I think his game will be about fitting in and accelerating how well he shoots open shots and how good he is on defense. So it's a different game than he'll play than Brandon Ingram. But I do think it's important to note that a guy like Brandon Ingram, who has a very similar aesthetic game in terms of getting to the mid-range, scoring fluidly, slender, not athletic in like the most poppy way, but like does have athletic traits similar to that of Ace Bailey, had a progression that went from 9 to 16 to 18 to 24. I don't think that's too dissimilar from Ace Bailey. Now let's look at Brandon Miller, who was put onto an awful team with more responsibility sooner in his career than Ace has and maybe ever will have. 17 points per game in his first season, then 21. Brandon Miller had awful, awful teams. And the difference would be Brandon Miller was 21 as a rookie. Ace is 19. And Brandon Miller, it didn't matter if he scored well or not. They were going to lose. Ace, just won't get that same volume. But those are archetypes. Brandon Miller, near all-star right now, playing on a better team. Still not great. He's probably the third best player on his team, if we're being honest, third or fourth. And Ace, I think, if you look at his athletic makeup, I think he's a better athlete than Brandon Miller. I think Brandon Miller is probably a narrowly better shooter coming into the league, but he's also older, and maturity in terms of strength when going against grown men really does matter. I don't believe in it so much as like, oh, Brandon Miller can't be good because he was 21 coming in. Not at all. I was very high on Brandon Miller. But I think strength really matters. And so in sum, when comparing these guys, I see Ace as splitting the middle in terms of all these guys. He has more defensive upside than any of the three, but likely less usage rate than Miller and Brandon Ingram. And maybe it's more similar to Michael Porter Jr. on the Nuggets. Maybe a little more than that, because Michael Porter Jr., of course, played with very dominant ball handlers in Jokic and Murray. And in sum, those players through 4 years are borderline all-stars. And 2 have the capacity to score 25 per game. Actually, I'll say this. All 3 have the capacity to score 25 per game because Michael Porter Jr. is doing it now, though it was well after his rookie contract. I'm not sure that player having the ball in their hands, scoring 25 per game is conducive to winning, but that's why honing those skills, showing what you can have, those guys have had the benefit of playing on bad teams, so they get this expanded role. Ace may never have that because the Jazz hopefully hit on a pick and right away they're contending. But what he does have is the ability to do all those things and can fit in and thrive in a role. And in those years, 2, 3, and 4 for Ace coming up, I think he will improve steadily. And if he, improves and puts up, let's say, 18 per game, which I think is very, very possible, considering I believe 14 per game is well within the cards for him this year. 18 per game by year 3, maybe 19, 20 by year 4. And he can defend and he shoots open threes well. You look at the market today, that's a $30 million player. And that's a success for the Utah Jazz. My guess, I'll give you my guess. I think by year 4, Ace is scoring about 19 per game on good shooting splits. And if all goes well with Key, Lowry, Jaren, and Kessler, another potential of getting a great pick like Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, I think he'll be seen as a really, really good Jazz man. I think the only thing that stunts his growth is should the Jazz draft a guy like Peterson or DeBonsa, where does Ace Bailey go? And that's a good problem to have. But if Ace progresses as I see fit, and I don't see, and one of those guys isn't on the Jazz, I see that progression. 17, 18, 19 points per game, 38% three-point shooter with the capacity to score from 3 levels and be an athletic defender. I think Ace can be really awesome for the Utah Jazz. Coming up next, I'll break down the growth of other homegrown youngsters, Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, and talk about their roles going forward and what I've observed this season as a change from last season. All that and more next on Locked On Jazz. And that's after I tell you all about FanDuel's awesome, awesome offer. Ever wanted to visit the NBA Finals, experience it live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. And here's how it works: use your profit boost on any NBA future. That'll automatically be entered into a shot for winning the NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience paid for, and you get a chance to go to the finals. So if you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run or awards, this is the perfect time to lock it in. And now, not only can you pick cash and you get cash money, but it could also send you to the NBA Finals. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On Jazz. Leif Thulin right here for you, filling in for David Locke throughout the All-Star break. Cody Williams has been one of the silver linings of yet another disappointing season in terms of winning. We love winning. We want to be in the playoffs, but development is certainly something we can all appreciate. And Cody Williams, I believe, has the most promise of the recently drafted guys. And to me, and I'm not counting Keontae in this, but of the recently drafted guys outside of Ace Bailey, Keontae George, I would take Cody Williams the highest because the way that I see the Jazz constructed going forward, he has the most clearly defined role, and that is to be the best perimeter defender on the team. Vince Williams, I would keep if the Jazz. I want to be really clear about this. If I had to say in this, and Vince Williams is willing to stay, I would keep Vince Williams on the Jazz because he too can defend. But nonetheless, Cody enables the Jazz to have a guy with length who can harass stars when the Jazz are playoff caliber, when the Jazz are playing the playoffs, and he has to defend Anthony Edwards, when he has to defend Cade Cunningham in the NBA Finals. Cody Williams is the guy on the Jazz that I trust most to have that ability down the road. And I think the Jazz are going to be playoff caliber sooner rather than later. And Cody's development as a defender and his subtle, not super, super obvious in the stat sheet, improvements offensively really help him. What's funny is a lot of what I really liked about Cody Williams coming out of the draft, I kind of am seeing. Like, it's a watered down version of what I thought. Like, I remember talking on a show, might have been Locked On Jazz, might have been a draft show, and I said, like, I think Cody Williams is a really good pick because he'll, at some point in his career, be a 14-5-5 guy, a guy who can score, pass, and rebound, and most importantly, defend. And he's not going to be that. I was wrong. Well, I was wrong about what I loved in the draft in that sense. But what I liked was versatility. And the NBA traits he possessed shined through immediately on tape. And in a poor class, I did think that steadiness, that ability to play both ends and facilitate would be important. His shooting was far worse than I thought. But Cody's defense and unselfishness and athleticism in the open court will play. And it will stick in the NBA. And it will help the Utah Jazz win a series at some point. And he's an improving rim attacker, super unselfish, and a clearly hard worker after what was a terrible stretch as a rookie. And he's improved by strides that are unimaginable to some as a sophomore. I think he's the best of the sophomore class for the Utah Jazz. And if you'd asked me last year, I wouldn't have said that. Now, Collier is a case of Jekyll and Hyde. He can pass. He can run a team when moving the team quickly. But unlike the Thompson twins, and Locke talked about it, so I won't go too far, the Thompson twins or Dyson Daniels, those guys of the world who can't shoot a lick, those guys are all NBA defenders, and Isaiah Collier is not, to offset his awful shooting. The Jazz can never fully run in the way that they want to with Isaiah Collier at the helm because he can't shoot. So can he improve his shot? Absolutely. Can he make it to be a good shooter? Probably not. And if the Jazz are intending to win, what we get from Isaiah Collier, I think, boils down to a pace type of guard who can't shoot, but will play hard and hopefully improves his defender as a hound on the ball, makes the Jazz more threatening when he's in the game on both ends, because then they can speed it up with his defensive prowess. Because I think he does have defensive upside. He's not there yet. Collier can improve as a shooter, will never be a good shooter. He's an improving decision maker, and he is a force when he has the ball in his hands. All that can be true. I would take Cody Williams as a higher commodity on the Utah Jazz than Isaiah Collier, despite Collier's counting stats proficiency. I do have optimism he improves his shot. I do have optimism he can improve his defense. How good of a player is that? And when the Jazz are truly trying to win, is it anything more than a, for lack of a better comparison, a a Ronnie Price who brings athleticism. The thing about Ronnie Price was he was a good defender. I think Collier's a far better passer, and he plays with more force, and he gets downhill, and the offense can be fine. But there's just levels to it when the game slows down and the floor condenses. I worry about his upside in a playoff series. We're a long way from that, and he's got a lot of room to prove me wrong. I do have optimism, but I'm a little more pessimistic about him than I am about Cody. Now, Filipowski is a curious one because I'm not fully out on Flip because the skills are there. He looks the part on offensive, at least, but he's a poor defender, and he lacks the toughness defensively at the 5, and at the 4, he lacks the fluidity of movement. So you have to play him next to a really good defender. The Jazz do have some of those in the case of Walker Kessler, of course. And the shot looks better than the percentage, but the percentage is say what you are, right? Like if you're shooting 33% from 3, it's not particularly good. His value offensively is that at that size, he can really pass the ball, and he's got the ability to score inside and out. And it's really an interesting thought process to see how we swing on a pendulum, to see how a year changes things, because to me, last year it was obvious Cody was, struggling. I did think he has potential, but like throughout the year, he was certainly struggling the worst. Right now, he's the best player of the bunch and the most potential of all the second-year guys. And then last year, you would have had, I don't know if you would have had Flip or Collier higher, but you would have had Cody last for performance. Maybe some would stay on the bandwagon and believe in potential. But right now, I think it's clearly Cody at number 1, and you can argue Flip or Collier either way next. So have they developed? Yes. Have they gotten better? Yes. Is it enough to stay on the Jazz's rotation when the Jazz do ascend? We'll see. We'll see what they're like in year 3 and 4. I'm optimistic about the Jazz for the first time in a long time, and the youth is coming around as well. We just need one awesome draft pick, and the playoffs are on our horizon. So please keep supporting the Jazz. You know what to do. Go Jazz as always. And thank you for all of you guys for tuning in to Locked On Jazz. And tomorrow we'll have a fun show talking about where Ace Bailey would go in a redraft, a couple more Jazz topics that are draft-centric throughout this All-Star break. And make sure you subscribe to Locked On Jazz so you get all the latest episodes. And if you want to talk to me about the Jazz, my Twitter is just Leif Thulin. L and the T capitalized. I'll talk to you Jazz, basketball, NBA draft, anything, anytime. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. So get Locked On Jazz ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Just head to lockedonjazz.supercast.com to join the club, and the links are, of course, posted below. For those of you on video, we send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel, and an audio. Make sure you make your second listen NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. Thanks for tuning in, as always, and most importantly, as always, go Jazz.